Welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you 5 tactical tips that you can use in FM24 that can turn matches in your favour. So this is my AS Cannes save in France, and we are in the top division of France. We're not quite the best team yet. We are joint on points with PSG at the top, but we're about the 6th best team on paper, or so the season preview says. Now, I'm going to jump right into it. It's not really about the game against Metz itself here. I'm just using this game to show you illustrative purposes inside the tactical screen. So the first tactical tip, and it's going to sound very obvious, but it's something that you guys might not be thinking about when the matches are happening. So if you're against a team that's playing a 3 at the back or a 5 at the back, basically that doesn't play with wingers, what you need to do, and again, it's going to sound very obvious, you need to push your fullbacks or wingbacks up the pitch, either on attack duty or make them wing backs so they go up the pitch. The simple reason for that is if you're 2 versus 1 on the wide areas, you need to push your wingers further up the pitch, push their wing backs back, and then also you get more control in the middle of the park because they haven't got an outlet on the wings. That's their natural width. The team that doesn't play with wingers, their width comes from their wing backs, so if you can push them back and they can't get out as easily. If you're feeling extra brave, you can move these wing backs into left wing back and right wing back spot, no problem. The amount of times that I've used this to my effect, especially against a narrow diamond formation, they've only got wing backs, like I mentioned, to give them the width down the side, and if you guys can push them back with your wing backs, then you've basically won half the battle before the match has even started. On to tactical tip number 2 then, and we are 3-0 up at half time, so I don't really have to change anything at all, but let's, for example, say we were down or we were struggling. The next tip is regarding this little button here, the analysis button. And if you click the analysis button at the top right of your tactical little pitch, you click that, it says display in-depth tactical analysis, including detailed information on how the players work together. So this gives an average position, right? And also you can tick this button here. It usually starts like this, but you can tick this button and it shows the opposition average position. So it shows you how you've lined up in that first half. It shows you after about 20 minutes, so you can have a look at the start of matches. I would recommend doing that, especially when you start with making the tactics, because you want to see how your players are acting in certain matches. So for example, if we have a look at this a little bit, my inverted wing back here, Facundo Rivas, he is, as you'd expect, naturally, average position, a bit more narrow. Now, my centre midfield attack, Omar Salis, he's had a very good start to the game, and that's because I've freed him up to get closer to the attacking 3 because Rivas is coming into this position here. So it's all together, it's all working, but what you can see is if it is working. On top of that, if you click on our position analysis alongside our average positions. So what we can see here, let's say, for example, this is going wrong. It's fine because we've got the ball, so they're having to mark us. But let's, for example, say they've got the ball and we're struggling to get the ball off them. One problem that we could see, potentially, is this guy here, Joseph Nduguidi. He's in a lot of space. We've had a lot of the ball this half, so he's not a problem. But if they had a lot of the ball, he might be a problem. And the things you can do with that is you could switch over my central midfield attack and deep line playmaker support. We could flip the tactic, essentially, and we could make our Omar Salis the left-hand side, so he's marking their playmaker, because obviously if we check how many passes he's made, if he's made a lot of passes, he could be their designated playmaker. So that's something to try and stop. Alternatively, what you could do is you could get your striker to mark him, but you're probably lacking an out ball once you do get it, because he's going to be marking their deep line playmaker. I don't really like to do that because that's quite negative and defensive. What we want to do is think of positive on the front foot changes that we can make. We also need to be a threat when we do have the ball. But another problem could be this guy here, Placheta. Now he's their left midfielder or left winger, and let's say he was absolutely causing problems, then what we could do is we could move our right winger back. So what we could do is we click off this screen, we could put Yusuf back here. Basically, my point is if you're struggling inside a match, check this little screen out and you might be able to see a few little things. For example, if your playmaker, my playmaker is Cisneros, he's had 2 assists in this first half, so he's absolutely fine. And as you can see, he's got a little bit of space here. He's also a very, very, very good player. But if you saw this and they are marking your deep line playmaker, let's say this guy here, Sacha Delay, let's say he was on top of Cisneros and he couldn't get any sort of influence on the game, then maybe you could push the defensive line up, so he's further up, or you could even drop the defensive line and then Cisneros will be slightly deeper and it will take that guy a little bit longer to get to him. Just little things like that, what you can do, not a problem. Another thing as well is their number 9 is on top of my halfback. If my halfback is trying to start the build-up and he can't do that, again, same as before, you might want to drop the defensive line or make the defensive line a bit higher. Basically get him away from their striker because you don't want him marked up, because your centre-backs won't be able to play to anyone. Again, hypothetical because we're fine, it's not a problem. But if you are struggling, they're little things that you can look at. Tactical tip number 3 is if you are an underdog team try and take off play out of defence. Now, it's not just a simple case of that you can't have that on ever, but a lot of highlights I've found, especially when you're newly promoted or into a top division and you basically haven't got a team as good as the rest of the league, especially if you're playing away against top teams, play out of defence is something that I would genuinely recommend against. Even if you want to play out of defence, there's games where you can do that and there's games where you can't do that. And you are going to lose a lot more games with play out of defence on against these top teams, especially away from home with the weaker teams. They're not going to be able to do it. Against the press, against the superior attributes of the better players, they aren't going to play out. They're going to get pressed, they're going to get tackled, they're not going to have any options. You're going to get those highlights where your defenders and midfielders are hesitating on the ball and they get the ball taken off them. How frustrating are those highlights? If you take off play out of defence, if they're under a bit of trouble, they're probably going to go long, which is way better than trying to play through a superior press with worse players, getting tackled, and absolutely raging at the game because your player has done something dumb. Now, yes, they have done something dumb, but you've also instructed them to play shorter passing. And if defenders have the ball and they don't have those shorter passes on, they will look for the shorter passes to the point where they will probably get tackled. So you are telling them to do it. It's probably your mistake. On the flip side of that, let's say you are a very good team now. You've gone through the transition process. You've got promoted. You've managed to get yourself into Europe. And this season, you're on for a title challenge. You feel like your team is finally ready to get that trophy. Couple of little tips that you can do. First of all, and again, I'm not saying these can never work because I'm sure you've had many successful tactics that have got these things inside them. But little things that you can do if it's not going your way, it's not going to hurt to try them. So first of all, take off pass into space because there's not going to be any space to pass into. It's as simple as that. Now, I'm not saying it can never work. All tactics are based on multiple, like hundreds of different variables inside the match engine. So again, I'm not saying these can't work. Something to think about is I would take off pass into space if you are a top team. Like I said, there's probably going to be no space to pass into because the other team know that they're weaker and they're going to sit back and try and hit you on the counter-attack. What you don't want to do is your midfielder to try and play ball into space. There's no space and then you're going to get countered by the team that's sat back. In the same way, the other thing to consider as well is if you are a top team, take off counter-attack. That is probably my biggest piece of advice to anyone that is a good team that starts to struggle around December time because teams are starting to change the style of play against you. They're not figured out your tactic. A lot of people say they've figured out your tactic. They haven't figured out your tactic. FM doesn't work that way. What happens is other teams see that you're doing quite well and they start playing a bit more defensively. So if they were on positive before, they might go to balanced or they might go to counter-attack. That's all they do. They don't consider the fact that you've got an inverted wing back and do anything to change that. They just look at how well you've done and how much better your team is. Basically, what I'm saying with counter-attack is teams will naturally, as you get better, sit further off. The same way I was just talking about the fact that pass into space won't work because there's no space. Counter-attacking is the same thing. So if you take off counter-attack, your team will still counter-attack. When the opportunity is there, and they will still do it. Don't you worry about that. I get a lot of counter-attacking goals even when I take counter-attack off. Now in this tactic, I don't have counter-attack off because I'm not yet an elite team and I'm also away from home against a mid-table team. So we are better than Mets, clearly, but we're not miles better than Mets. So counter-attacking opportunities are still there on a regular basis. If I was against a team in the second division now or right at the bottom of Ligue 1, then I probably would take counter-attack off. It's something I do change if games are not going in my favour. That's why I'm bringing them to you on this video, and it works very, very well. The simple logic behind it is if a team is defending deeper, when your team gets the ball, they're going to look to try and counter-attack, and because of that, there's no space to counter-attack into. So just try and take it off. Your players will still counter-attack, I promise you. Don't take it off thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to counter-attack. It's just not the case. They still will, just not with as much regularity, which is probably wasting some possession that you can have. Because when you're a top team, what you want to do is you want to put your players' strengths and their superior attributes onto the pitch, try and keep the ball as much as you can, move it around, and hopefully score goals that way, like all the top teams do in real life. And number 5, the last tactical tip I'm going to give you guys. Now, Mets were still 3-0 up and it's the 85th minute. I was hoping to show you this at the 75th minute, but Mets didn't make any substitutions. But it doesn't really matter what minute we're in, the point still stands. So check your opposition's substitutions. What I mean by that is if you go into this page here, if you go into your tactics page and then click on opposition right here, you can have a look at basically everything. So you can have a look at their condition, you can have a look at who's been subbed on, etc., the rating, all that good stuff. So what we're looking at here is if any players get subbed off or subbed on key positions. So let's say it's a tight game, it's 1-1 against hypothetical, or you're just winning 2-1 and it's an important game to get into the playoffs or promotion. and you're wanting to sort of stifle and shut out the opposition team. And they all of a sudden bring on 2 centre midfielders and 2 wingers. Straight away, they've got so much more energy and legs in the midfield, and you need to counter-attack that. And what you need to do, if you're winning, you need to be more reactive to what's happening for the other team to make sure you get the points. So if you go into here and they've done that, what you might need to consider is if your players in midfield are tired, changing them as well. So you meet their fresh legs with your own fresh legs. Same way as if they bring on a winger or 2, you might want to take a fullback or 2 off just to make sure they're not going to get skinned by these fresh legs. And vice versa, if you're trying to win a match, look at it the other way as well. So if they've got tired fullbacks, maybe bring 2 wingers on, or they've got tired central midfielders, maybe bring on some midfielders to try and get hold of the ball and create some chances. We ended up winning the game 3-1 against Metz. They scored a consolation goal right at the end, but I'm hoping you guys learned something from the video. If you did, please leave a like and a subscribe on the channel just before FM26. Let's go into the new game with a bang. Let's get some good content out there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.